In the last episode of The Time Compass,
When we mention Egypt, three images come to mind: the pyramids, the desert, and that long and impressive river called the Nile. Sound familiar? So now to the Great Pyramids, the most famous symbol of ancient Egypt. The pyramids shelter great mysteries and questions that even today remain unanswered. Even modern engineers have a hard time figuring out how they were built. The Egyptian pharaohs believed in creating works that would proclaim their greatness throughout the ages. Each pharaoh would construct fantastic monuments to either the gods or, well, themselves. The pyramids were tombs built for the great pharaohs and were filled with many artifacts. Egyptians believed that they would meet the god Osiris in the afterlife and could bring along anything they had from the living world. So, many of the pharaohs decided to take this journey well prepared, taking many treasures and goods with them. The more they took, the more they would have in the afterlife. The Time Compass. Ancient Egypt, Part 2. Ancient Egyptian artwork has a very distinctive look, unlike any other culture in the world. The ancient Egyptians left behind many works that are treasured today. Egyptian artists were not just out to capture beauty in their artwork, but to describe a part of life. Beauty was less important to them than perfection of detail.
create your own Egyptian art.
Egyptian art is well known for always having the characters standing sideways. Ancient Egyptians had very strict guidelines for representing different parts of the body. For instance, since human heads can be easily observed and reproduced from the side, the Egyptians always painted them that way. Or this way. But the eyes were better represented as if the character was facing us. So they used eyes facing forward, while the head looked to the side. Now to the chest and shoulders, which are best shown from the front. But arms and legs showed a better sense of movement drawn from the side. So we use the side angle. This way of drawing people using many different angles makes Egyptian art look flat and contorted. To our modern eyes, it almost looks like it was run over by a car.
Yikes!
Finally, let's take a look at the pharaoh. No, he wasn't 30 feet tall. The more important a person was in Egyptian society, the larger they were depicted in Egyptian art. So naturally, the pharaohs were huge. Science. Ancient Egyptians were great astronomers and scientists. In fact, they created the 365-day calendar, with each day divided into 24 hours. That's the same calendar we use nowadays to know which day of the week it is, or when holidays begin. Of all the scientists of the Egyptian Empire, one stood above the others and is still known today. He was Imhotep the Wise. Imhotep was the founder of Egyptian medicine, as well as high priest and vizier of Pharaoh Netigerach-Djoser, for whom he designed the first step pyramid, which makes Imhotep the first known architect in history. In ancient Egypt, doctors were very respected. They used an early form of paper called papyrus to write down medical notes and diagrams. These notes, kind of like a medical textbook, were handed down from generation to generation, and some have survived to this day. From them, we know that the ancient Egyptians even had specialist doctors that just dealt with the skin, the bones, teeth, or heart disease, just like we have today. Ancient Egyptian knowledge of the human body was very advanced, and they had hundreds of different kinds of medicine to treat all kinds of diseases or ailments. And if a patient was really sick and needed surgery, the Egyptians had many instruments used for doing just that. But Egyptian doctors took care of the dead as well as the living. They invented ways to mummify a dead body, and this was a very important part of Egyptian culture. Much of the study of ancient Egypt is about unwrapping and studying these preserved mummies.
Egyptology.
Centuries of history look down on you.
That's what Napoleon said to his soldiers at the bottom of the pyramids. When this great military leader disembarked in Egypt in 1798, he was not only interested in the strategic location of the place, but also in the marvelous treasures it sheltered. Thus, apart from soldiers and weapons, Napoleon also brought a group of scientists from France to study ancient Egypt. It was these scientists that named the study Egyptology. This young area of study took a huge leap forward when a French official called Bouchard found a carved black stone. This was to be called the Rosetta Stone. This ancient stone has carvings of the same message written in 3 different languages: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic. This proved to be the key to unlocking many of the mysteries of ancient Egypt. After many years of studying the stone, the scholar Jean-François Champollion finally deciphered the hieroglyphs and stated that each sign corresponded to a sound. Hence, Egyptian hieroglyphs could be translated for the first time.
I have finally translated hieroglyphs!
After many years of study, Champollion was finally able to relax. The newfound ability to read hieroglyphs allowed scientists to decipher the location of Tutankhamun's tomb. This famous pharaoh died when he was 18 years old, and in 1922, Howard Carter opened his tomb, which was over 3,000 years old. The tombs of pharaohs often had warnings and curses written on the walls, but Howard Carter and his team ignored the warnings for the sake of science. But then there was a blackout in Cairo. And over the years, many mysterious deaths befell the people who were there at the opening. Since then, it's been called the Curse of Tutankhamun. It was even said that everyone visiting Tutankhamun's tomb would end up being a victim of it. Nowadays, however, lots of people visit the tomb, and no one really worries about the curse. Well, almost no one. The end of the Egyptian Empire. Just as the saying goes, together we stand, divided we fall. As centuries passed, the power of Egyptian pharaohs began to decrease due to innumerable internal fights. As a result, they ended up being dominated by powerful neighboring empires. First, the Persians, then the Macedonians, and finally, the Romans. Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of ancient Egypt. It is said that no man could resist her extraordinary beauty, which was legendary. Mark Antony was a powerful Roman general who was captivated by her love. Cleopatra believed that their love would bring back the splendor of Egypt. Mark Antony and Cleopatra went to war against the Emperor of Rome, Octavian. But Mark Antony and Cleopatra lost, leaving what remained of Egypt in the hands of Octavian and the Roman Empire. Although thousands of years have passed, the influence of the Egyptian civilization still remains alive among us, and their colossal monuments remind us of their grandeur and majesty. Let's dig a little deeper with our time compass and find out what else was going on around the world at that time. What was happening in the Middle East while Mark Antony and Cleopatra were losing their famous battle to Octavian? That battle happened in the year 29 BC. At that moment, the Roman Empire was not only dominating and oppressing Egypt, they were also doing the same to many other cultures who lived along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. For example, one of the kings who served the Romans was Herod the Great, ruler of Judea. Herod was not very popular amongst the Jews because he was cruel and ruthless and lived in fear that somebody would snatch the throne from him. He didn't even trust his closest relatives. During his reign, he ordered that many members of his family be put to death so they wouldn't one day try to take his throne. According to Christian belief, Herod was visited by 3 wise men from the east. They told him they were looking for the new king of the Jews, who, according to all prophecies, had just been born in Bethlehem. This wasn't good news for Herod, who tried to find and get rid of anyone who could possibly be the person they were talking about. But Joseph and Mary fled to Egypt with the baby Jesus Christ, and so escaped Herod's terrible wrath.
So, Jesus Christ himself grew up in Egypt?
That's right. Christians believe that Jesus spent his childhood in Egypt, and years later returned to Judea to preach love and tolerance as the path to reach the kingdom of heaven. His actions started a religion which attracted so many followers, it changed the course of Western history.